Welcome to Dig Deep, the mining podcast. In this podcast, we go deep into mining news, hot topics, and live interviews with mining professionals and leading figures in the mining industry. Introducing your host, Rob Tyson, founder and director of Mining International and Mining International Executive, a leading global mining recruitment and headhunting agency.
Hi, mining community. Welcome back to another episode of the Dig Deep, the mining podcast. And today's guest is Todd Ross, who's the managing director and CEO of Nordic Nickel, who are a junior miner that holds a district-scale land holding of highly prospective nickel sulphide tenements in the world-class central Lapland Greenland belt of Finland. Todd has a finance background with over 23 years' experience in finance, derivatives, and corporate advisory within the natural resources sector. He specialises in projects and acquisition finance across a range of commodities in multiple jurisdictions. Has been at the helm of Noridc Gold for the last 18 months and is now going to share his journey with us and what Nordic Nickel have been up to and looking to achieve. So that's welcome, Todd, to the podcast. How you doing, Todd?
Yeah, well, very well, Rob. Thanks. Good to chat to you.
Yeah, and yourself. So I wondered if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, about your career. As I mentioned, you've got a finance background. So I just wondered if you can talk us through your career, how you've got to where you are today.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, thanks, Rob. It's it's a bit of a step out of the world of banking to moving into running a junior exploration company. It's certainly it's not for the faint-hearted. That's for sure, and certainly in this kind of climate that we're operating in now, with the markets being pretty tough. Look, yeah, as you said in the intro there, I've got a long background, over 20 years in mining, project financing in particular. So I was previously the MD and head of the metals and mining business for BHP Paribas in WA. So I had a fantastic client base. I had 20 odd clients in Perth. And we were doing everything from commodity derivatives right the way through to corporate loans and M&A activity as well. So long experience in that sector. My whole career in banking has been, and advisory has always been in the natural resources sector. Having come from Perth, still live in Perth, you really can't avoid it. Some way, shape or form, you're going to be associated with the mining industry, and I love it. I'm very passionate about the industry. I was on the other side of the fence, clearly, providing finance to junior exploration companies or to developers. And I've always had a passion for being able to be part of something and build something. And I guess my experience with working for a French bank over the last 10 years was that, you can see there's a lot of activity going on in Europe, in particular in the energy transition. And there's a massive need coming for all the critical minerals that we need for that energy transition. And, my experience at the bank was, looking at transitioning the portfolio away from what was, traditionally more of your lend and hedge type deals, looking at the gold and bulk commodity space, but moving into more of the battery metal space. So I've done a number of deals in nickel project financings and in lithium as well. And I guess there was an opportunity that came along. I got approached on Nordic Nickel. It was pre-IPO. So from my perspective, I thought, seemed a little early, perhaps. There's a lot of work to be done, and the group that were putting together the opportunity was a private equity business out of Hong Kong. It's a group called Starboard Global, and Rob Brixton, who runs that business, had been looking around for critical minerals assets, in particular nickel, in Europe, and he'd been approached. He'd been introduced, to another group called Magnus Minerals, who owns the project, who owned our flagship project, the Pulju Project. And look, I guess in those early days, the idea was to put some seed capital into the project, see where we could take it, and then potentially do an IPO a couple of years down the track. This is all before my time, but when they got access to some of the historical drill data that had been, some work that had been done by Outokumpu, the state-owned mining company back in the 80s and 90s, that's when things really changed, and that's when I got involved. That I essentially took a look at this asset as if I was to bank it. If everything was to come true, would it be the sort of asset that I'd be willing to back? And clearly that's why I'm here. You know, I decided that after doing my DD on the projects and Finland and Europe and everything that's going on in the battery metal space, that I thought this is a fantastic opportunity to get involved in an early stage explorer. But I think we've got certainly big ambitions in Europe, and looking to build to become a major supplier of Class 1 nickel sulphides in Europe, which is, I think we're very well placed to be able to do that.
Obviously, you mentioned that you've come from the banking back. You have banking background in the resources space, and you sat the other side of the fence. How has it been sitting in the CEO seat for the last 18 months? Is it what you expected?
Well, the one thing it takes a bit to get used to is not having a balance sheet. We've got a bit of a balance sheet, and obviously we had a pretty successful IPO. We managed to raise 12 million Aussie in the IPO. But compared to working for a bank where, obviously the balance sheet's not the issue, it's more about the deals and the structures and the assets themselves. What's been, fantastic for me is to be able to get deep into one particular project. As I said, I had a client base of over 20 clients before and banking many of their projects. So you spread yourself pretty thin across many different projects and different companies and management teams. Now I've been able to get well and truly into the detail and the project itself, and start building a business and building a team around us. And that's the exciting thing, is really, having a vision, having the ability to be able to make decisions and really grow a company. I think that's been the most rewarding and exciting part of taking this leap into being a CEO.
So I wonder if you can just tell us a little bit about Nordic Nickel, about the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Rob. I mean, look, the Nordic Nickel was listed on the 1st of June on the ASX. We were looking to raise between 8 and 12 million Aussie. We got a lot of support back then. When we issued the prospectus back in May last year, the market was still pretty good. Certainly reasonable at that time anyway. And so we managed to get the IPO away at 25 cents, for raising 12 million Aussie. It was only probably 6 weeks after that the RBA lifted the rates in Australia for the first time, and the ASX, the market started coming off from then. The company really was listed on the back of our flagship project. We have two projects, but our flagship project is called the Pulju Project. And both of our projects are focused on the central Lapland Greenstone belt of northern Finland, which is an area that's highly prospective for nickel sulphides, but also for copper, cobalt, and PGEs as well. The area has been historically explored primarily by Outokumpu, so the state-owned mining company, as I mentioned before. And then back about 20 years ago, Finland, when it became part of the EU, opened up the country and foreign companies started coming into Finland. But it's really been a sort of jurisdictional domain by some of the majors. So we've got the likes of Anglo American, who have been operating in the same areas as us in the central Lapland Greenstone belt for 20 odd years. The likes of First Quantum, Rio Tinto, all in that area, but not a lot of juniors exploring in that space. And we were lucky enough to be able to do a deal where we secured this asset, the Pulju Project, 100%. And that asset it's a big district scale project. When we talk about what we're looking for, it's really, we have two analogs. There's one operating nickel mine close by to us. There's 2 operating nickel mines in Finland, and only 2 operating nickel mines in Europe, full stop. The closest nickel mine operating was started by First Quantum, and that's the Kevitsa mine. That's a open pit disseminated nickel operation, 9.5 million tonne per annum processing plant there. The big analog though is the Sakatti discovery, which was made by Anglo American about 10 years or so ago. And we have both. We're chasing both Kevitsa style disseminated nickel mineralization, and so far from our drilling campaign, we have plenty of that. It's everywhere we're drilling, we're coming across more of this wide disseminated nickel. the big prize is the Sakatti style analog, and that's really what really was the game changer in central Lapland. And in fact, that project, the Sakatti deposit was uncovered by using modern exploration methods, modern geophysics, and that's what we've been applying on our Pulju project as well. So yeah, the Pulju project, there was some drilling done, as I mentioned. There was about 10,000 meters drilled historically. We were able to get access to all that drill data before we listed, and we could relog and reassay all of that drill data, which was fantastic because, first of all, it confirmed what the report said, that there was plenty of disseminated nickel there. But what got everyone excited was the fact that within that disseminated nickel, there was already some high-grade intersections that hadn't been recorded anywhere. And that was enough of a of a sniff to indicate that there's this potential for massive sulphides, and that's really what the Sakatti style analog is. Sakatti's a 44 million ton deposit with 1.9% copper and 1% nickel, and it's probably one of the biggest discoveries in the last 20 years. And that the size of that project compared to ours, I mean, the Pulju projects, we've got 240 square kilometres, which is about double the size of the Sakatti footprint on their current project. So yeah, that's what we're chasing.
Just wondering if you can, what's the exploration thesis on the Pulju project, and why are you confident in the potential of this asset?
Yeah, look, the exploration thesis is really, I guess, twofold. We know that looking at the Sakatti analog, that there's the marker for high grade massive sulfides is plenty of near surface disseminated nickel. As I said, we're finding plenty of the near surface disseminated nickel. The exploration thesis was really focused on testing the conditions of the system to ensure that we had all the conditions were right when it was formed to be able to form multiple high-grade deposits within that belt that we own. And our drilling campaign that we've kicked off in January was really about, those first few holes were really about testing those conditions to prove that they all existed. And we drilled a number of deep holes, first of all, to test the base of the cumulate layer, as we call it, potentially, but also to see if those conditions were in place to form those high grade deposits. And so of those deep holes that we've drilled, we've encountered those conditions in 3 places now. And now it's really about building out our knowledge and building the geological model and zoning in and vectoring in on where the high grade deposits pods will be within that area.
Wonder if you can just tell us about the other project that you're involved in as well.
Yeah, so the other project is close by to Sakatti as well. So I should mention that the Pulju project is about 100 kilometers away from the Sakatti deposit. The Menenkiokki project, which is our second project, is Menenkiokki 3, sorry, is about 15 kilometers away from where the Sakatti deposit is. So it's all in the same central Lapland Greenstone belt. Pulju sort of sits to the northwest of the rest of the Sakatti area and a town called Sodunkula. But the Menenkiokki is really an earn-in agreement that we have with Magnus Minerals, who were previously the owner of both the Pulju project and Menenkiokki 3. And again, what we're looking for is in chasing in Sakatti style analogs. We're looking for the same sort of mineralization, both the ultramafic mineralization there.
What news flow can investors expect from Nordic Nickel over the sort of remainder of this year?
We've got a lot of news flow coming. Unfortunately, some of the drilling from the beginning of this year was delayed with assay results. So we kicked off our maiden drilling campaign in January, and because of our because we were selected to participate in this BHP Xplor Program, which I can chat to you about a bit more in a minute. It gave us the confidence to not only drill some deeper holes, which, as I just said, we needed to do to test the conditions of the system, but also gave us the confidence to secure a second rig. So we accelerated our drilling program in winter beginning of this year over the first 3 months. And what it's meant is we've drilled around 15,000 meters of diamond holes this year. And there was a bit of a backlog with getting the assay results out. We're getting more of them now coming through. We've changed labs, and we're getting those assays coming through very regularly now. So we've only released the results. We've drilled 28 holes, and we've only released the results of 8 of those holes so far. So for the rest of the year, what investors will see is a lot more assay results coming through on the drilling campaign. We'll complete the drilling campaign over the next month or so. We'll then get an update to our mineral resource estimate. So we had a mineral resource estimate that we put out within 6 weeks of listing last year based on the historical drilling. We now are underway with an update to that mineral resource estimate, and we'll get that out by the end of the year. And then finally, the other piece of news flow is that we'll be getting out the details about our met test work that we're currently undertaking as well. So there's a fair bit of information coming through by the end of the year.
Obviously, you mentioned the BHP Xplor Program. Just wondering if you can just tell us a little bit more about that, and also how Nordic Nickel came to be involved.
Yeah, look, the BHP Xplor Program, it's the first year they've run it. It was a absolutely phenomenal experience. We really loved it. The idea behind the Xplor Program, it's an accelerated program. Essentially, what BHP are trying to do is support junior exploration companies like ourselves, both private and public companies like us, to really help them put together all of the components within the organizations to ensure that they are really set up for success. There were 250 companies that applied to the Xplor Program, and then 7 that were selected. And ultimately, what they were looking for was companies that were in jurisdictions that they were comfortable to operate in, if it went down that track, in a commodity that they're looking to expand their portfolio in, and in this case, it's mostly in copper and nickel. But then also projects that had potential scale. They had to have the potential, BHP scale ultimately. So the 7 companies that were selected were given $500,000 each as a grant, so non-equity, non-dilutive grants, and then we'll put on this program for 6 months, where essentially we got together on a regular basis with the other companies in the cohort, and that in itself, everyone got on exceptionally well. It was a really great program. It was set up along 3 pillars, essentially the operational readiness, technical readiness, and business readiness. So it's all about sort of making sure that we were established appropriately. And for us as a company that's only a year old, or only 6 months old at the time when we were selected by BHP, it was a fantastic opportunity for us to really get ourselves set up for success going forward as well. And we've had a great time. It ended at the end of June. There's still discussions going about what kind of future alliance we could potentially have with BHP, and we certainly encourage any other companies to look at throwing the hat in the ring for Xplor 2.0 as well, which I think has kicked off recently.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned other companies in the cohort. Was there a lot of things that you learned from some of the other companies that were part of the program, and maybe some ideas that were generated amongst other CEOs of these other 6, 7 companies, which you potentially could input into your company?
Look, absolutely. I mean, there were 7 companies. There's basically a CEO from each company, and then the chief technical person as well from each company, so representative. So 14 people in total. We're all together originally in February when we all got together for the boot camp, and then again in March when we got together what we called the toolkit camp, which was boot camp was pretty intense. So it was a week-long process where we had external experts coming to give us master classes. We had BHP experts, and then we had a lot of workshops together as a cohort and as a group. Of the group, there were I was the only non-geologist in the group, so 13 geologists and then me. I learned a lot from all of them, and I certainly valued everyone's input and advice, and there's certainly amongst the group some very experienced CEOs have been doing this for a long time. And for me that was invaluable to get the opportunity to spend time with them and get to know them a bit better. But then some incredible technical expertise as well. We had Jim Ungle, who's professor in nickel sulphide deposits, and he gave a masterclass himself on and on some of the things that we've been looking at. And we all learnt a lot and discussed different techniques and different ways of doing things too.
How do you see the developments in Europe with respect to obviously the energy transition benefiting Nordic Nickel?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's a huge demand growing for critical minerals for the energy transition, no doubt. The EU Critical Minerals Act, which was released, I think, in March this year, has gone some way to try and to rectify that. I think with 10% of all raw material supply that are on the critical minerals list needing to come from Europe, there's a very much a growing awareness of the challenges that Europe is going to be facing in securing that critical mineral supply. There's a lot of gigafactories going in already. Big commitments being made and capital being spent to build these gigafactories. The OEMs in Europe realise that securing critical mineral supply now means that they're going to have to do things differently, because as they see how the Chinese supply, a lot of it's already been locked up and with offtake agreements already, and that's been happening for years now. And now with the Inflation Reduction Act in the US last year, that's created another challenge for Europe to be able to get on the front foot and try and secure their supply. So I think the challenge, and the opportunity for Nordic Nickel is the fact that there's very little new projects being developed. There, as I mentioned before, there are only 2 nickel projects in the entire in the entirety of Europe. Both of them are in Finland. One's about 100 kilometers away, and the other one's on the other side of Finland. The entire battery value chain already exists in Finland, so we've already got the smelters and the refineries. And again, Europe's entire smelting and refining capacity for nickel is in Finland and Norway. And that's it. So there's a huge opportunity for us to be able to tap into that battery value chain. And then obviously as things progress with the EU, there's opportunities for us to explore potential grants, get support on tenements and and sort of processing of approvals and things like that. So I think this is a fantastic opportunity, and it's very rare that a junior company like us kind of positions themselves to be in a spot where we can be a player, a substantial player in what is a massive change going on in Europe, and I think we've got the asset that's going to be able to deliver into that.
Why should the investors consider investing in Nordic Nickel, and what is the actual potential upside?
Look, the upside from where we are at the moment on our current share price is substantial. I've got to say that for sure. The fact that we already have a maiden resource, which we released in August last year. The maiden resource, I should mention, is 133 million tonnes at 0.21% nickel. So that's contained 278,000 tonnes of contained nickel already, and 12,500 tonnes of cobalt. Look, that's a low grade near surface mineral resource estimate, but that was really just to draw a line in the sand, because that's only on our Hot and Vara license. The Hot and Vara license is less than 2% of our whole landholding, and that early stage drilling that we did this year to test the conditions of the system has now confirmed that the whole belt that we have, which is effectively 25 kilometers up one direction and 10 kilometers up the other direction, is prospective and potentially mineralized. So for investors, the upside is massive. We're talking about a resource that's already there. We've now drilled another 15,000 meters in addition to that resource in that area, and now we're just getting started in the whole belt. So we're going to be here operating for a long time to come, and we're positioning to be a major strategic player in the whole battery metals value chain that's going on in Europe.
And lastly, what's the outlook for the company over the sort of next 6 to 12 months? And is there anything else that you want to tell our audience?
Yeah, so the outlook's pretty exciting for us. As I said, we'll get the drilling completed this in the next month or so. The next steps for us is to complete the geological model and then kick off again with the drilling campaign next year. So once we get the updated resource out by the end of this year, there'll be more drilling taking place next year with an update again to the resource estimate. So for shareholders, it's really starting to build momentum, and I think this is where we're at. And what's so exciting, we've attracted the attention of the world's largest mining company already. They're very excited about what we're trying to do. There's plenty of others that have also approached us on that front, including some of the OEMs already who obviously desperate to secure supply. And I think we're well placed to be able to play in that that growing market. And as the project builds, we're going to be able to deliver into that. So we're looking to build a business here, and we're building a business around being a sustainable source of Class 1 nickel, and a sustainable and traceable source of Class 1 nickel, which is going to be so important in Europe.
Todd, thank you for your time. Really appreciate giving us an update on Nordic Nickel and obviously your journey over the last 18 months. Wish you well for the next sort of 6 to 12 months, and perhaps you can come on the podcast sometime next year and give us an update.
Look forward to it. Yeah, no, thanks for your time, Rob. Really appreciate it. Great to chat.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share, as always, share these episodes with people within the industry, but also people outside of the industry. Obviously, Todd's just demonstrated they're looking to develop a nickel mine, which is crucial for the energy and green transition that we're moving into. So it's important that we get the message out to people outside of the mining industry also as to what mining is about and what we're doing. So really appreciate your continued support. Please keep sharing these episodes. And until next time, happy mining.
Thank you for listening. Remember to reach out to Rob via the show notes, and be sure to subscribe and leave a review. Until next time, happy mining, helping each other to improve the mining industry.